this particular show, and IBC chairperson, that is Erastus Edang-Ethakon, says Commission is preparing for the 2027 election. The chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Monitoring Commission, Erastus Edang-Ethakon, said the Commission is in the final stages of preparing a roadmap to guide the 2027 elections. Now, he stated that the plan is currently undergoing legal review before being approved by commissioners. Ethakon emphasized that the plan is inclusive and seeks input from key stakeholders, including the media, religious groups, civil society organizations, political parties, and the judiciary.
The reason why the numbers are low is because of the way we have set up our centers and the distances, and that young people, we are making an assumption, and that these days maybe they are lazy to walk the distances that some of us used to. So we're introducing a digital platform where now you have a link and then you have a pre-registration form. You can fill it like right there. You can fill in all your details, and all you need to do is to walk into the next Huduma center or registration center and just give your fingerprints and you go. We just take your biometrics, 3 minutes, we are done. So I hope that will also encourage the young people to come up and register in large numbers. So we will be informing the young people once we are done with that system. So we are saying therefore that election preparedness is not done in isolation, and I have emphasized the role of other actors, including the religious community. So we will continue to engage with you, civil society, political parties, the media, security agencies, and development partners to ensure that.
Right now, President William Ruto has announced plans to introduce tax relief for low-income earners. He said that he will table a proposal in Parliament to exempt formerly employed Kenyans earning 30,000 Kenya shillings and below from pay tax. Now, this move aims to ease the cost of living as government continues to reform the tax system. The president said the exemption will enable low-income workers to take home money pay and promote a tax system that is responsive to Kenyans' other needs.
We are now saying that any Kenyan who earns less than 30,000 shillings will not pay any taxes. Number two, we are saying any Kenyan who earns up to 50,000, we are reducing their taxes from 30% to 25%. 1.5 million working Kenyans will not pay any taxes. 500,000, another 500,000 working Kenyans will have their taxes reduced from 30% to 25%. That is how progressively we are going to make sure that we manage the cost of living, so that the people at the bottom of the pyramid, we can be able to support them. Wakati tulisema bottom up, it was not a slogan.
Right, moving on, the UGM party leader David Maraga has announced that has accused the government of misgoverning the county, citing poor leadership. Speaking in Vinungwani, that is in Kwale County, during a voter registration drive, Maraga said corruption has become rampant in government departments and blamed public servants for looting public resources. And according to Maraga, the government has allowed corruption to become entrenched in government departments, with civil servants allegedly looting public funds, contributing to poor service delivery in key sectors like education and healthcare.
Zaidi nataka kusimamisha wizi wa pesa ya serikali. Wizi wa pesa ya serikali nataka kusimamisha kabisa. Kenya si masikini. Kenya si masikini. Ni pesa ambao ile ambayo inatakikana kwenda kwa shule ya watoto wetu inachukuliwa na watu binafsi, wanaenda kufanya mambo yao. Mumeona mara nyingi pesa zinalipwa kwa shule ambayo haiko. Pesa zinalipwa kwa hospitali ambayo haiko. Na wananchi wanaendelea kushangaa na kutopata ile huduma ambao wanatakikana kupata.
Hawa wenyeji vuguvugu wa pwani wanaongea kwamba hali ya uchumi imezorota, lakini wao wako na shamba, hao wako na madini, hao wako na bidhaa. Tuwaonyeshe na tuhakikishie ya kwamba wakati utakaochukua ushukani uwe wewe ni kiongozi, ile madini, ile minerals, ile red rubies ambayo iko huku, ya kwamba lazima ikuje isaidie wananchi wa Kwale, isaidie wananchi wa pwani, ndio ilhali ya kwamba uchumi ya nchi hii, ya sehemu hii ikuje juu.
Right, moving on to some sad story now. An American Christian worship leader and songwriter Ron Kenoly has died at the age of 81. The internationally renowned gospel musician reportedly passed away on Tuesday, February 3rd of 2026, with the news confirmed by the several artists through social media. Now, tributes have poured in from across the Christian music community, with fellow worship leaders and musicians describing Kenoly as a defining figure of an entire generation whose music shaped their worship journeys. Born on December 6th of 1944 in Coffeyville, that is in Kansas, he rose to global fame in the 1980s and 1990s, known for leading massive live worship events that influenced churches, especially in Africa. Ronnie Kenoly will be remembered as a giant of gospel music, whose voice, spirit, and message of praise inspired countless worship leaders, musicians, and believers worldwide. Letitia Fandi now reports.
The globally acclaimed gospel musician passed away on Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. News of his death was confirmed by several artists and worship leaders through social media, triggering an outpouring of tributes from across Christian music community. Born on December 6, 1944 in Kansas, Ron Kenoly rose to international prominence in 1980s and 1990s. He became widely known for leading large-scale live worship concerts that helped redefine modern congregational worship, particularly in Africa. Kenoly began his music career after serving in the United States Air Force. His breakthrough came in 1992 with the album Lift Him, which became the fastest-selling worship album of its time. Kenoly's music shaped generations of worship leaders and musicians, with songs that remain central to church worship services around the world. Ron Kenoly is remembered as a trailblazer in gospel music whose sound, spirit, and message of praise continue to inspire believers worldwide. Leticia Afandi, EBN TV.
Thank you, Letitia Fandi, for that particular report. And of course, may Ron Kenoly soul rest in peace. Moving on, services in Homa Bay, public health services in Homa Bay County have been disrupted after doctors began a strike. About 60 doctors downed their tools following the expiry of a 21 strike notice issued to the county government by the chairperson of the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union, that is KMPDU Homa Bay branch, Dr. Rogers Otana, said the county owes doctors over 7 million Kenya shillings in salary arrears. An additional 6 million Kenya shillings in union deductions has also been remitted. Doctors have insisted that they will not return to work until their demands are met, leaving thousands of patients without services at public hospitals.
Makes us strong. Of the 7 agenda items that we raised in our strike notice, only one was conclusively addressed: the matter of promotions and redesignations. But of the 7 others, and the most important one is the matter of arrears. The county government of Homa Bay owes doctors arrears to the tune of about 7 million. They also owe the union another 6 million. And until they pay up, until they pay all our members their arrears, we are going on strike.
Now, the government says it is continuing efforts to build a modern, resilient and inclusive economy through reforms in health, public service, industry and citizen investment. Government spokesperson Isaac Mora said recent measures, including the digitization of health services and payment of pending government bills, reflect a renewed commitment to economic growth. He added that these steps aims to address current economic challenges while laying a strong foundation for long-term sustainable development.
Also, in addition, the Treasury has approved 255 billion to clear pending bills and boost businesses. This is very important for our people. The government has approved 255 billion to settle long-standing pending bills to suppliers and contractors, easing cash flow pressures and restoring confidence in public procurement. 80 billion has already been released for roads, and 175 billion will be progressively cleared after verification supporting business nationwide. You remember, we had actually a business outlay or claims of up to 600 billion, but a good number of them were found to be fake, about 57%. They could not be verifiable. But the rest that have been cleared, now we can see they are being paid, and actually 98% of these claims were below 100 million Kenya shillings. So it's very, very good. The other thing that is also very good, the government, through the Trade Cabinet Secretary, Lee Kenyanjui, has announced that Kenya's new automotive policy will allow Kenyans to buy brand new vehicles at price equal to or lower than 8-year-old imports. And this, for sure, is because of Isuzu, which has positioned Kenya on the global map as the first country outside Thailand to manufacture MUX model. I don't know whether you pronounce MUX or MUX, with local assembly incentives reducing its price to by 27% from 13.5 million to 9.9 million. No, if you get this 9.9 million, it's almost the same price with 80-year-old models. So this is actually going to promote affordability and strengthen local manufacturing. So there's a lot that the government is doing, and we remain committed to ensuring that we put our focus on that. As you know very well already, there's an IPO for KPC. Please buy the shares. We want to ensure that we have proper infrastructural development.
Now, a coalition of churches held a conference yesterday bringing together religious leaders, UNICEF and the Ministry of Gender and Culture to discuss alternative ways of protecting children following reports of child rights violations such as early marriages and female genital mutilation.
There was an arson. We were here through the night, and I want to bring to your attention that all is well. We have come to the situation. One of our dormitories had caught fire, but the firefighters came to the rescue, and now there's no fire in the school. We managed, there were 20 boys that were affected by the smoke. They were not in the rooms. In fact, they were doing their preps. So when they heard there was fire, they ran out of the rooms, the classes, and so some of them were affected by the smoke. But we managed to take them to the nearest county, sub-county hospital. And I was there. I carried about 6, and the principal about 7, and others. And those who helped or assisted us in carrying the students, they went there, we took them to the hospital, they were recuperated, and then...
Now, 3 students have been arrested following a fire that broke out in a dormitory at Salai Boys Secondary School in Nakuru County. Now, the fire occurred in the early hours of yesterday morning, leaving about 50 students with minor injuries and completely destroying a dormitory that housed 88 students. Police confirmed. Now, police suspect the incident may have been deliberate, that the school management has allowed Form 3 and Form 4 students to go home and is expected to return to school on Monday.
Kile kimemuua ni kufura kwa brain na kutopumua vizuri kwa sababu ya congestion ya lungs, na yote tukilinganisha pamoja tunaona alikuwa na acute febrile illness ambayo tunaendelea na kufanya utafiti wake tuone ilikuwa what kind of acute febrile illness, lakini personally nikiulizwa nasema huenda ikawa ni cerebral malaria.
Acute illness means it's a process that has developed within very few days. Yes. So if you give the treatment at the right time, then you'll be able to manage the condition.
Fanya mikutano na imekubalika ya kwamba tuungane kwa pamoja. Tunaomba public, tunaomba wote ambao walikuwa wanafanya mob na wote waliokuwa na hasira, tunawaelewa. Lakini tunaomba unganeni sasa kwa uzuri na shule, tuweze kumzika Akinyi kwa njia nzuri, tupate support ya shule ije iomboleze msichana ambaye ilikuwa inamfunza.
Now, Njoro Girls School has been closed following the death of a Form 4 student. The student, identified as Brenda Kenyi, died last Saturday after allegedly failing to receive timely specialized medical care while at the school. Now, postmortem conducted at Egerton University Macharia revealed that she had a brain tumor and breathing complications which led to her death. Reports indicate that the condition could have been managed if she had been taken to hospital. Now, however, the family has appealed for calm following unrest witnessed on Monday to allow preparations for Kenyi's burial. Take a look.
Kile kimemuua ni kufura kwa brain na kutopumua vizuri kwa sababu ya congestion ya lungs, na yote tukilinganisha pamoja tunaona alikuwa na acute febrile illness ambayo tunaendelea na kufanya utafiti wake tuone ilikuwa what kind of acute febrile illness, lakini personally nikiulizwa nasema huenda ikawa ni cerebral malaria.
Acute illness means it's a process that has developed within very few days. Yes. So if you give the treatment at the right time, then you'll be able to manage the condition.
Fanya mikutano na imekubalika ya kwamba tuungane kwa pamoja. Tunaomba public, tunaomba wote ambao walikuwa wanafanya mob na wote waliokuwa na hasira, tunawaelewa. Lakini tunaomba unganeni sasa kwa uzuri na shule, tuweze kumzika Akinyi kwa njia nzuri, tupate support ya shule ije iomboleze msichana ambaye ilikuwa inamfunza.
Right, we hope that justice will be served to the bereaved family and friends. Moving on, residents of Kariobangi in Nairobi and as well as Machakos town remain unsettled following a rise in cases of abandoned newborns and infants. The latest case involves a baby believed to be 8 months old who was found dumped beside a sewage channel in Mabanda area of Machakos town, already dead, and another newborn has been found dumped in a trash bin a few meters away. And according to Machakos County OCPD Joseph Moturi, 4 such cases have been reported in the past 2 months. Machakos County Children's Officer Emily Kimanzi said many pregnant women abandon their babies due to failure to attend antenatal clinics.
Sika kama sisi community promoters tumekuwa tukihimiza wamama habari ya kulea watoto.
Juzi tulikuwa na jambo kama hili pale Zambia Plaza, na tukaarifu ya kwamba tukatoa himizo kubwa sana ama warning ya kwamba jambo kama hili serikali ya Machakos County Government halitavumilia kamwe, kwa sababu wewe ukiwa umepata mimba, hiyo ni baraka kutoka kwa Mungu. Hivi basi hakuna haja uchukue mtoto yule ambaye umemzaa ama umejifungua na kwenda kutupa mtoto yule katika pipa la takataka ama pipa la taka.
Naomba kwa wakazi ama hasa wanawake, tafadhalini na waomba, kama mnashindwa ni kulea watoto, kuna njia mzuri. Ufikapo level 5 unaruhusiwa kuomba ruhusa kama mtoto amekushinda, wao wako tayari kuchukua. Raundi ya pili ukishindwa na mtoto unapeleka mpaka police station au wataweza kupatia usaidizi.
Now, a group of leaders from the coast region led by Chief Kadhi has called for political tolerance and peaceful coexistence among communities. Speaking during the opening of Othman bin Affan Mosque in the Serani area, the leaders stressed the importance of protecting places of worship from political interference, saying that such spaces should remain zones of peace and spiritual guidance.
Tuweze kuishi sawa sawa, ipatikane umoja kwa msingi wa dini na mapendo, ili tuweze kwenda mbele, tupate maendeleo na tuishi juu ya imani. Na hiyo kitu ambacho Uislamu wetu unatufundisha. Haijalishi wewe kutoka mrongo gani, unaamini gani, nini, lakini Mungu ni moja. Sote tuwe kitu kimoja, tuweze kuendelea kwa msingi wa dini.
Tutoka msikitini tuwaombea Mungu. Wale ambao wenye kuleta siasa za mgawanyiko, ilobaki kuwaombea Mungu. Kwa sababu hata maneno ya binadamu hayatoshi. Itabidi sasa tuwaregeleshe kwa Mungu. Sijui huyu yafaa, huyu hafai.
Tuwaombea nchi yetu iwe na amani, tuwaombee nchi yetu iwe na utulivu, tuwaombee nchi yetu iwe na mafanikio. Kwa sababu bila ya mafanikio, bila ya amani, hatuwezi kuabudu katika majumba yetu ya ibada.
All right, now moving on, 14 workers of Let's take that again. And 14 workers of the Italian aerospace company, that is ASI, in Kilifi County, have filed a court case accusing the company of unlawful termination. Now, the workers claim that their dismissal was illegal and has caused serious financial hardship, including inability to repay loans. Now, they were speaking to the media in Malindi, where they asked the court to order payment of the terminal dues ranging between 1.4 million Kenya shillings and 2.3 million Kenya shillings.
Naona afadhali tutafute haki kotini. Tumeomba sana koti tuangalie, na kwa sababu sisi hatuoni kama kuna sababu zozote ambazo zimetuelekea sisi kufutwa.
Tuliomba kule kotini kwamba tulipwe hiyo mshahara, na kama pengine tajiri ameamua tubaki nje kama vile alivyofanya, basi koti limuamuru tajiri huyu atulipe pesa za ile miaka iliyobaki mpaka retire, kama ambavyo document yake ambayo alisign inaonyesha.
Yale mengine ambayo yanafuatana na kuachishwa kazi kinyume cha utaratibu wa CBA na utaratibu pia wa kisheria na mambo mengineyo ambayo yamekuja na kutatizika wakati hatuna kazi kwa ghafla, wakati watoto wanatatizika na wale magrantors wanaumia kule, hayo yote tumeyaweka wazi ili koti iweze kuyaangalia.
Right, moving on, a head teacher and his family were forced to flee for their lives after their homes were burned down by an angry mob following the death of 2 people linked to a land dispute in Rangwe Sub-County, Homa Bay County. Peter Ngong, head teacher of Onyege Primary School, lost all his property after residents of Wikoti village burned his house. The attack occurred after villagers accused Ngong of being responsible for the death of retired teacher Joseph Worth and his family Pamela Worth, now who died on Sunday and Monday while receiving treatment at Kisii County Referral Hospital. The affected family is now in hiding for fear of their safety as investigations into the land dispute continues.
We really need to address mental health issues among our teaching fraternity and community. They could also be going through a lot of duress, and they are just looking for a small trigger, and probably, just probably, this is what may have happened here. I don't want to justify, but let us follow due process, due procedure. Let justice be served to this family, and not just served, let it be seen also to be served. I know they are going to bring the perpetrators to book, and that also does not make me support arson. Arson is a criminal offense.
Right, 46 minutes past the top of the hour. We are due for a short breather here on Morning Live, but when we come back, we'll tell you what exactly the newspapers are saying. Don't go too far.
You are watching EBN.
Right, do apologize for that. Now let's take a look on what you're waking up to this particular morning as far as the dailies are concerned, and I'm having the Daily Nation newspaper this particular morning, and the Standard newspaper dated the 5th day of February 2026, and top story on the Daily Nation says queries on Tycoon's State House visit. And of course, there is a picture there of the head of state, that is President William Ruto, with the Zimbabwean Wicknell Chivayo, right? And on January 11th, the controversial Zimbabwean Wicknell Chivayo flew to Sagana State Lodge to meet President Ruto and his deputy Kithure Kindiki. It was the latest of many visits to Kenya's corridors of power by the flamboyant business notorious in his country for previous money laundering conviction. Chivayo's dalliance with Kenya's top leadership has so far raised eyebrows. Now, the background of this particular conversation, in a previous interview published by the BBC on June 22nd of 2025, the wealthy business describes himself as a hardworking, what is quote-unquote hustler with quote-unquote Midas touch. Now, the report says for years, Sir Wicknell, as he calls himself, was loved to boast about his riches on Instagram, although the source of his wealth is not clear. All right. Now, in 2011, memoir Cry Havoc, British Mercenary and coup plotter Simon Mann recalls his time with Wicknell in Zimbabwean's Chikurarohi maximum prison. That is, of course, it is in Zimbabwe. Of course, that's a story exclusively on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation newspaper this particular morning. Now let's talk about matters to do with healthcare and planned chemical castration for sex or the of sex pest starts debate. Now, proposal by the task force for chemical castration of convicted sexual offenders has sparked intense debate with medics, lawyers and human rights activists giving sharply differing views. That's a story on page 12 of the Daily Nation news for this particular morning. Let's take a look at that particular story on page 12, where it says a proposal to introduce chemical castration for convicted sex offenders has sparked intense debate with medical experts, lawyers, and human rights activists offer divergent views. Now, the Technical Working Group on Gender-Based Violence, which presented its report to President William Ruto on January of 2026, made the recommendation. The task force, which was headed by former Deputy Chief Justice Dr. Nancy Baraza, proposed the amendment of the Sexual Offences Act of 2006 to include chemical castration of medical offenders. Now, when the proposal has been framed as tough response to sexual violence, experts warn its effects could be far-reaching and lifelong. Now, consultant urologist and head of department of the Aga Khan University Hospital, Dr. Ahmed Ali Yusuf, describes the use of what is quote-unquote chemical castration as a complex issue. Now, he considers it as a form of violence. I don't know what's your take on that. If this act is actually passed, the chemical castration, what do you make of that? Medics say it is not good, for the convicted's health. Let me know your views. The raw SMS line to 3059 and as well as on our Facebook page at EBN TV Kenya. Now let's talk about matters to do with politics. And yesterday, bigwigs shun UDA in Mount Kenya as Ruto hosts thousands of aspirants. Now, the registration of politicians for the 2027 contest by the ruling party has exposed its dwindling fortunes in the populous region. That's a story on page 7. Of course, it is actually evident that Ruto's popularity in the Mount Kenya region is actually dwindling. And of course, yesterday, the head of state actually had a meeting with his party members, and where 2027 realignments, bigwigs in Mount Kenya shun UDA ticket. Now, the registration of aspirants for the 2027 general elections by the ruling United Democratic Alliance, that is UDA, has exposed dwindling fortunes in Mount Kenya region. Now, data by UDA shows that bigwigs in the mountain are shunning the party that swept President William Ruto and the most of the lawmakers there in power in 2022. Now, in some counties, the governor's seat did not attract a single aspirant to face the incumbents elected on UDA ticket. The party, however, remains strong in Rift Valley based on the number of the registered aspirants. It is also seeking to make inroads in Western Coast and the Nyanza region. Now, more politicians from the the Orange Democratic Movement, that is ODM bastions, have registered to run on UDA compared to those who sought the ticket in 2022 general elections. Deputy President Kithure Kindiki said it is not a must for elected members to register as aspirants, adding that UDA still has a window to attract more aspirants as the general elections approaches. Now, while some counties in the Rift Valley have as many as 16 hopefuls for the governor positions, politicians in Mount Kenya seem not to have adopted a wait-to-see approach before taking the decision on which outfit to contest the elections. And of course, you'll remember when the former deputy president, that is Rigathi Gachagua, was actually ousted from office, that's where President William Ruto actually lost ground in the Mount Kenya region, right? And we've seen, some of the leaders in the UDA front who are in the Mount Kenya region, we've seen, them having divergent views with the head of state, all right? Now, the UDA data shows that, Ruto's popularity in the Mount Kenya region is actually dwindling with no gubernatorial aspirants in the Mount Kenya region, all right, where no one has actually applied to be governor on a UDA ticket in Murang'a, Embu, Laikipia, and Nyandarua counties party files show. All right, moving on, House team gives nod to 204 billion Safaricom sale, and the National Assembly Finance and National Planning Committee says only 29.8 billion Kenya shillings will be available for development expenditure in the 2025-2026 financial year, underscoring the urgent need for divestiture of the state-owned enterprises to ease pressure on public finances. Now, the committee, chaired by Molo MP, that is Kimani Kuria, noted that out of projected ordinary revenue of 3.321 trillion Kenya shillings, 1.097 trillion will go towards interest payments on the country's ballooning debt, while 960 billion will be spent on the public wage bill. All right, moving on to matters education. Students avoid arts and languages in senior school and lessons no one wants. Some public institutions have enrolled only 2 or 3 learners in languages and creative arts subjects at senior school, with the low enrollment raising doubts on the viability of the classes. That's on stories to do with matters education on page 10 of the Daily Nation this particular morning. Now let's take a look on what's making headlines on the Standard newspaper this particular morning, where ODM, top story actually on the Standard newspaper this particular morning. There's a picture there of ODM party leader, that is Oburu Oginga, who actually took that particular office after the death of the late Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, and his picture is there. And of course, the ODM SG, that is Edwin Sifuna, on the front page of the Standard newspaper. All right, and of course, we've seen divergent views in the ODM party. All right, now the Standard says ODM cracks deepens, and Orange Party is trying to straddle power and opposition, and the law may not let it. And as quiet talks with President William Ruto's UDA gather pace, legal experts warn that the party is trapped in a binding marriage to the Azimio, and it cannot simply wish away. Now, the maneuver has ignited a brutal internal war, pitting a pro-government faction eager to cut deals with State House against diehards fighting to keep ODM from sliding into political submissions. With Uhuru Kenyatta reshuffling Azimio, ODM risks tearing itself apart. That's a story on page 4 and 5 of the Standard newspaper. And where is the dilemma? Now, the legal trap and political overreach, ODM remains legally bound to the Azimio One Kenya coalition and cannot lawfully negotiate or enter a new alliance with UDA party without formally exiting. All right, and crippling internal fractures. Now the party is split between factions pushing for accommodation in government and those determined to preserve ODM's opposition identity, with Azimio signaling an organization at war with itself. All right, now relevance gamble by flirting with UDA while Azimio is being reconstituted. ODM risks surrendering its dominance in the opposition without securing meaningful power in government. All right, that's the dilemma in the UDA and ODM, right? And it says, according to the constitution, if the ODM party will actually form a coalition with the UDA party, it has to exit the Azimio One Kenya coalition. All right, let's take a look at that particular story on page 4 and 5 of the Standard newspaper this particular morning. And legal experts say that the party could struggle to join other coalition before properly exiting the existing agreement with this, which is still backed by a vocal faction within ODM. Now he argues that ODM is being paralyzed by paperwork rather than politics, trapped in a legal straitjacket of its own signatures, and it cannot simply discard through a press conference or a roadside presidential declaration without complying with the laws. An internal war has erupted within Kenya's largest opposition party, pitting loyalist and acting party leader Oburu Oginga against a powerful rebel factions. Now the battle lines are drawn between abandoning the Azimio la Umoja coalition to run into awaiting arms of President William Ruto's UDA, or digging into fight from within. Reconstituted Azimio, now headed by Wiper Party leader, that is Kalonzo Musyoka, who took the office just recently. I believe it was actually yesterday, where they had a meeting, an tete-to-tete, where the former president, that is Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, actually said that Wiper Party leader, that is Kalonzo Musyoka, will actually be the party leader of the Azimio coalition, the Azimio One Kenya coalition, I beg your pardon. And now Junet Mohammed, who actually was the SG of the coalition, was actually removed from that particular seat. All right. Now let's take a look on other stories making headlines on the Standard newspaper this particular morning. Biting hunger keeps learners out of school. And in the sun-scorched plains of 23 counties in the arid and semi-arid lands regions, the blackboard in classrooms is quickly becoming a relic. Now, a merciless drought following the failure of last year's short rains is keeping learners away from schools as parents choose between family survival and education. Now, the Kenya Red Cross has painted a grim picture at the Hifo Primary School, noting in Garissa more than 120 children have already dropped out. Families dependent on pastoralism are moving with their livestock in search of water and grazing land, where school's feeding program has become the lifeline of many children, and an acute water shortage and irregular supply of food items remains other means the learners have nothing to run to. All right, and it's quite an unfortunate story right there, where at least 120 children cannot go to school because of hunger, food. And you can imagine how these particular families and schools expect these families actually to pay for education, and yet they're struggling to put food on their table. All right, we hope that someone will actually come to their rescue. Moving on to matters electoral process in Kenya, even as we head to 2027 general elections, IEBC faces the big credibility test amid changes at the Secretariat. Now, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission's IEBC says it has not extended the controversial contract for voting technology provider. Smartmatic chairperson Erastus Edange Thakon also maintained that the resignation of Chief Executive Officer, that is Marjan Hussein Marjan, was for the best interest of the nation, but declined to confirm if it had anything to do with the contract for the Kenya Integrated Elections Management System, that is KEMIS. Amid pressure from the United Opposition, the CON yesterday announced that the technical teams were yet to submit their proposals for their examination and approval. Right, the CON as well yesterday said that the commission needed time to constitute changes to deliver credible elections. In his communication on Marjan's exit, the chairman spoke about a need for what he termed as critical reforms within the Secretariat ahead of the next year's elections. The opposition, which has been pushing for Marjan's removal, vowed to push for his prosecution for what they term as executing factions not designed or designated to him before the IBC was fully constituted. It also pledged to push the commissions to terminate its dealings with Smartmatic. All right, that's a story exclusively on page 2 of the Standard newspaper this particular morning. Let's take a look on the Marjan in controversy. He rose, and so did he exit the polls agency. Now, Hussein Marjan emerged controversies at the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, that is the IBC, to become the chief executive for more than a decade. Marjan, who replaced Wilson Shulei as Deputy Commission Secretary in charge of support services, replacing in March 2015, will serve at a time when the agency faced management and accountability crisis. And an accounting expert he was tasked with overseeing the administrative, financial, and logistical functions at the Secretariat. Now, in 2017, amid turbulence following the nullification of the August presidential election and a falling out among the top officials, Marjan was appointed lead coordinator. He later assumed office as acting chief executive officer on September 5th that year, with the exit of Ezra Chiloba, who had been sent on a compulsory leave and later dismissed on allegations of gross misconduct. Marjan would remain in the acting role for nearly 5 years, probably the longest interim tenure in the Commission's history. Now, while his prolonged stay as the acting CEO drew public debate about institutional stability and governance, his substantive appointment in March 2022 followed a competitive recruitment process. Before his forced exit on Tuesday, his tenure, much like those of his predecessors, attracted much criticism. Right, in his final days, Marjan, the opposition rejected IBC's continued engagements of Smartmatic, the supplier of the Kenya Integrated Elections Management System, that is KEMIS, ahead of the 2027 general elections. Now, opposition figures accused Marjan of authorizing procurement decisions without full commission approval, arguing that the move raised credibility concerns and revived unresolved reasons from previous elections. Of course, Marjan was actually set to retire his tenure was actually scheduled to end on March 2027, but he resigned this particular week. That was actually yesterday. All right, moving on, Mtata 6 to stop hospital AGM over missing 9 billion Kenya shillings. And Busia Senator Okiya Mtata has filed a fresh petition at the High Court seeking to halt the Nairobi's hospital's upcoming annual general meeting scheduled for Thursday, citing alleged financial mismanagement and governance chaos at the iconic medical institution. That's a story as well on page 3 of the Standard newspaper this particular morning. And moving on to matters politics, President William Ruto hosts 12,353 UDA aspirants vows fairs primaries. Now, President William Ruto yesterday hosted 12,353 aspirants seeking to vie for elective seats on the United Democratic Alliance ticket in the 2027 general elections. The aspirants comprised 149 gubernatorial hopefuls, 279 Senate candidates, 323 women representatives, aspirants, and as well as 1,372 the parliamentary contenders and 10,230 candidates for the member of county assembly positions. President William Ruto assured them of fair, free, and credible Democratic Party nominations, saying that he will personally ensure the integrity of the process as well. urged aspirants to embrace tolerance, peace, and discipline, warning that UDA will not tolerate insults, or violence. The president also called on women leaders to support one another and urged male aspirants to respect women's leadership, noting that all candidates will enjoy equal opportunities regardless of the gender. Right? That was actually a meeting that was held yesterday with the head of state. Right? And as well on page 6 of the Standard newspaper, there are pictures there of people paying respect to the 6th anniversary of the second president of the Republic, that is Daniel Arap Moi the late. All right, and of course yesterday, people were actually, paying their respect in the 6th anniversary. And of course, there is a picture there of Raymond Moi and his wife Susan and their children Le Rad during the 6th anniversary of former President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi at Kabarak, that is in Nakuru County, yesterday. And of course, Gideon Moi and his wife Zahra, with sons Kimoy and Kigen and daughter Lulu Hona, former President Daniel Moi at Kabarak yesterday, and as well as Kabarak University Vice Chancellor Professor Henry Kiplagat also attended the commemoration, and as well as Doris Moi and her family during the 6th anniversary that was at his Kabarak home in Nakuru County, and as well as Kibran Kiprop, grandchildren of former President Daniel Arap Moi, and as well as Sylvia Moi, widow of Jonathan Moi, Reverend Paul Ombati of Moi Girls High School, or the Moi High School, Kabarak Principal Elizabeth Cheriot, during the 6th anniversary, and as well as Alfred Kigen, a relative to former President Daniel Arap Moi, Moi Primary and Junior School head teacher Nelson Kipto, and as well as Molo Rose's general manager Paula Koros and Mzurie Flowers CEO Andrew Wambua, placing a wreath during the 6th commemoration of the former President Daniel Arap Moi that was at his home in Kabarak. All right. At that note, we want to wrap up our morning live this particular morning. You're now up to speed without you're waking up to this particular morning as far as news is concerned. My name is Martin Macharia. Thank you so much for staying with me for until this particular minute. It is exactly 17 minutes past the top of the hour. Remember to catch up with the subsequent bulletins later on in the day at 1 p.m. with Letitia Afandi, 4 p.m. with Sami Morunga, 7 p.m. with Sami Morunga, as well as 9 p.m. with Jeff Somba. Martin Macharia is my name. Do have yourself a lovely day. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. And as always, let's do this again when God says we do.